Alright, welcome back to the third video in our Create with Code box jump game. We've done a lot in this game already, starting with things like our spawn manager, having it do invoke repeating. We've done instantiation, and right now we've made it stop whenever the player we pull from the player script a boolean called game over. So if it checks to see if the game is over, our move left script is doing the same thing. It stops if we've hit the game over, and also destroying some game objects. This game has been fairly involved from the beginning, from some of the concepts we started with it from the start. Like in our last couple of projects, we folded them in very nicely. So today's is a little more conceptual. Like I'm going to have to explain a little bit more opposed to just doing. But then we will obviously be adding some effects along the way. The video today is going to be animation. So currently on your player, when you get him, as soon as you got him out of your course library and you put him in here, he was a prefab, right? The character, I'm saying he because I have a punk character in front of me, was a prefab. And on that player, you have an animator game object. And it has a controller. So if I click on that, it'll take me into the course library, source files, into the FPX folder, and then animations. And it pulls up this simple character controller. So today we're going to be taking that character and looking at the controller and how animations and the controllers work together. The first thing we probably should do is at the very top of your screen, and you might not be able to see it because of my screen recording software, but there's a window button, and it has a drop down option here. Select it, and let's go to animation panel, and don't choose animation. I'm going to show you what it looks like really quick, but animation looks like this, and this window is where we make animations. And it's easier to do with 2D, and at some point we might be doing this in class. I'm not sure yet, but right now we don't need to actually make animations. You have some already made for you. Instead, we want to go to the window animation animator, and it might automatically snap onto something over here. Now this is a little too tight for me. I want to move this out of the way. So I'm going to take my animator tab from here, and I'm going to drag it down here so that I can see it much larger. So I do have my player selected, and if my player is selected, you will see that you have the animator, and you'll have a bunch of different layers already chosen. Now it's a little bit different moving inside of the animator than it is inside of the scene view. So if you want to get zoom in and out, it's still the push pull on a Mac, with 2 fingers on the trackpad, but holding option down and then click and dragging is what drags us over here. So currently we're on the movement layer, and then these are all of the different states. So let's, conceptually speaking, this is how a animator controller works. Animator controller is basically a file or an object that holds all the information related to animations for a game object. So the player has a controller and all of their animations information. So the animations themselves and when they're triggered and how we trigger them are held inside of this controller. So currently what we see inside of the movement layer is a bunch of states. Now a state is not the same thing as an animation, because a state holds more information than animations, but for our intents and purposes we'll say that these are the different animations that we have. Now I went ahead and worked on this video a little bit beforehand, so yours might look different. I'm going to fix this back. The way yours looks is you probably have this green entry here, and then this line, and goes to an orange idle button, and then from here you have all these white lines. So I'm going to double click on this idle. So when I click on this idle, you can see that it has all this information about this state, including it should be on the animation tab, and I might drag this up a little bit. And it already comes with animation sample window here. I can press the play button to see what the idle animation looks like. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And you can see there's a little bit of bobbing left and forth. left and right. So I can stop that. So when we first enter the game, our character is in an idle state, and that's currently what's happening. The problem is that we don't want our character to stay within this state. We want it to transition to some of these other states. Like we want to have it a walk animation or a run animation. And now you already have these states laid out for you, but the question is, how do we get to them? So first, let's look at these different animations. Some of you will probably be interested in the grenade throw. We won't be using this, but it's just kind of fun to see. Boom. This guy's got some lifeless eyes. So we have a walk static, so two versions of walk. And you can see that the character is stationary based on the grid below them. And on the bottom you have frame counts here as well, so you have a general sense of how many frames it takes for them to go through the entire animation. If I go to the walk animation, you'll see that it actually propels the character forward whenever this animation plays. So for all intents and purposes, because we want our character to stay in the same position, particularly on the x-axis, we probably don't want to use any of these non-static animations like the non-static run. We want to use the walk static and the run static. So if I click on it, a single click on it, not double click. So if I double click, I get all this information. But if I just single click, my inspector shows some useful information, which is what transitions are already built. And so that's what these white lines are. So you can see that we go from walk static to run static. And we also go from walk static to idle. So that's what we have connected. It also has a speed, and we can slow down the animation based on this speed number here, which we'll probably play with in just a second. The last thing to note, of course, are these transitions here. If I click on one of these lines, let's say idle to walk static, it's got some really important information for us. One, it has a little model here that shows that transition occurring. So you can see he's going from idle, and then it's acting like, oh, he's going into a walk animation. But if you drag this down, even more important to us, and what's really relevant for us, are these conditions. Now, when you build your own animations, you have to decide what those conditions are, and you'll have to come up with these on your own. But these are already made for you. And in order for our character to go from idle to the walk static state, we need to trigger a condition in our transition. That's a lot of words, but basically one of these conditions have to be met. One of them. Now we're going to be trying to make both of them. We're going to make sure both of them are met for our intents and purposes. But the question is, where do these conditions come from? And if I look over here, back in my left-hand side of my animator room, there's a parameters button. And right here, you can see that these are being stored. All of these parameters, so like we could add one right here. And sure enough, you probably are familiar with these things now. We can add a float, an int, a bool, or a trigger. And then in a script, we can say if a float, let's say like this right here, this is a float. That's why this is speed underscore f. If the speed float, it reaches greater than 0.25, then this animation will go from idle, or this state will go from idle to walk static. So basically in an animator, we add in these floats, ints, or bools, or triggers, and then in a script, we will make these things come true. We'll check for them, and then this animator will know, okay, I now need to move to the next transition state. And what's really cool is you can blend these together so that your character can slowly go from standing still to walking in a very natural state. That's what this is right here, this little tagline. You'll notice that at this point in the animation, they start taking a step and it looks pretty normal. But we won't be doing that for this model. We're going to, I guess our end goal will be is to make our character run at the very beginning of the game, start off running, and then we're going to try to make it so that they jump and they have a jump animation. And then I think by the time we're done, we're going to make so that we have a death animation if we hit an obstacle. So the first thing I want to show you though is triggering one of these conditions. So this is right now speed of f is greater than 0.25. So over here I see my parameters, speed function or speed float right now is 0. And that's why your character is staying in the idle state. So if I press play, we'll see that entry goes right into idle and the idle animation is running. And it is currently checking to see if the speed ever increases above what we had before. But it looks like I hit an obstacle. But I'm still doing the idle animation. Now, I could, here, change this to 0.3. And all of a sudden, you'll see that I am doing a... Well, let me see if I can zoom in here. That might be better. I'm doing a walking animation. And even though I would want to change this in the script, you can see that it now is playing this walk static state and that animation that's attached to it. So I'm going to stop playing, and because I was in play mode, this won't save. Since we want our game to already be in a running mode, let's see what it takes for it to get to idle through walk static until run static. So I'm going to check this transition here. And the condition says, oh, it needs to be greater than 0.5. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this. We're going to hard set this inside of the animator. I'm going to set this to 1. So that's definitely above 0.5. So what we should see when I press play is it go from entry to idle to walk static to run static fairly quickly, because he's already going to be at 1, a float of 1. So let's see. And yeah, sure enough, you see like it go blue and the game starts off and they are running. Now, if I were triggering the walk, animation, I just want to show you that really quick. So let me turn this one back off for just a second. So 0.0. You notice that I have to put a 0.0 here because it is a float. This one down here, reference_int, is 0. Like it doesn't need a decimal point. So if we did a regular walk animation, I'm going to show you the issue here. So let's see, speed of f greater than 2.5. But static B has to be false. So let's see, static B. Right now it's true because it's checked. So I'm going to turn that off momentarily. And then let's set this back to greater than 2.5. So I'll go back to like 0.3. So now what's happening is it knows that static, the boolean is turned off. So I want to show you why we don't want to use these walk animations. You'll see that our character is going to be propelled forward because of the animation. Like that. And so that's why we don't want to use them. Alright, so I'm going to turn that static bool back on, and then put this back at 1. So one more time, I'll reiterate. A animator controller is an object, or almost like a script, but not really. It's just an object that holds information both about states, which include animations, parameters to trigger these, so the things that are required for this to trigger, for them to transition between each other. And I want to go back to this layers tab, but even within here, everything in the movement layer is everything related to them walking. But I also have, a weapons layer already built out. So all of these are available. We have a crouch one built. So for every time you have a character in the game, you have to build these out. And some tools help make this easier or worse, but animation is a complicated process. But once you figure out how to do it the first couple times, it's not as hard as it sounds. But you're looking at this is definitely a little more intricate. So first, we're on the movement one. We're going to stay here. Instead of our character going right now, I'm going to go back to my parameters. So right now they're going straight to their run static animation, because this static because the speed of f is greater than 5. Speed float, I should say, is greater than 5. Then I'm going to go ahead and just make the entry when it first comes in just be the running. So the way to do that is you click on run static, single click, control right click on it inside of the window, and then set it as your layer default state. So the default is when the game starts, he will be running. So press play just to check and see if that's the case. And there you go. That looks good. I'm going to press jump. Now, of course, it's not perfect. It feels like his running's off a little bit to me. So what you'll notice is that I've already adjusted my speed up here. So if I single click on run static, it probably started off at 1 with you. And what I'm looking for is the background sort of matching his running. So it feels like he's running slower than the background. Yeah, honestly, it looks like me when I'm running. Slower than I look like I should be able to do. but somehow not out of breath yet, because I would be passed out already. So I increased his speed here to like 1.5, and that felt like he was a little more urgent, had a little bit more energy, which is kind of exciting for the game, but not too fast that it seems like neurotic. See, that feels a little bit better to me. And you can play with that speed of the animation. You're not changing anything about the physics of the world, just how quickly this run static is occurring. So that looks pretty good to me. But we know that we want to also make a jump trigger. So before we go do that, let's go look at our layers and let's look at jumping. And I am going to hold down Option and click and drag to move this over. So it looks like as soon as we start, we go into idle. But let's see if I press play, if it recognizes it's an idle state or if it's in run. Yes, it's in run, so it understands run. But I want it to trigger this standing jump. There's two ways to cheat this system. So let me think the way I want to do it. I think what we're going to do is just see what requirements are. And it looks like all we have to do is say jump trigger. Just do a trigger. And trigger is just like a message, like boop, jump. So just so you know, oops, I'm going to add new layers. I don't want to add new layers. On parameters, let me go to parameters. Again, so you can see. So float is looking for a decimal, and is looking for a whole number. Boolean is looking for a true false statement. And trigger is just like whenever we do on trigger enter, it's a one-time signal that says do this thing. So on jump, we need to activate jump underscore trig. I'm curious, is this the same condition here? So we might accidentally, because we're in the run state, cause this to trigger. But I have another fix for this. So here's what we'll do. We want to, in our script, call this jump trigger. So let's go to our player. I'm just going to go back to my project folder, back to assets, and to scripts, to my box player script. And first thing we want to do is we want to get the component. We want to find the animator that is on our player. So we've gotten components before now, and the animator is right here, so we know that we need to get it. Since this script is on our player, we can just tell it to get component. So first thing is let's create a variable to hold information about our animator. So I'm gonna make this one private because we don't need to see it, and it's gonna be a private animator, not an animation, and I'm just gonna give it a variable name of player anim. There you go. So just like we've done with our player rigid body, right? We get that component here. So we went player rigid body equals get component rigid body. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say, I'll just put it right here at the end of line 16. It doesn't matter as long as it's in the start method. As soon as the game starts, we want to go get the animator and store information about it. So we'll just say the same thing. Player anim equals get component, and then open up those carets. That's what those greater than, less than signs are known as. And we have to spell the name of the component exactly as it is here. So animator. Animator. And then we need to add some open close parentheses because there could be some other conditions or whatever related to this parameters. And I'll add a semicolon. So that's fine. So when the game starts, we will find an animator and then call it player anim. But we haven't actually done anything with it. So to trigger our jumping, we need to call, it looks like we need to just call for this thing called jump trig. So we're going to set trigger. Set trigger. So this is an important thing. So because we have these different types of options here, oh, am I adding more layers? I keep on doing this on the layer buttons. I want to go to parameters. Because we have these different, we can set float, select int, select set bool, and set trigger. So know those are options. This is how you trigger animations. You can just set a number, and the animator will find it and apply it appropriately. That's the kind of thing I would put on a test maybe. I don't know if that's a big enough hint. I hope that it is. So let's look in our script. Where are we jumping at? Well, it looks like in our update we are checking to see if we're pressing the space key and if we are on the ground. So this is where we want to add this option of turning on the jump animation. So I'm going to go to inline 27 and press return. I don't know why my tab is all the way over there. That's kind of weird. I'll just do it this way. So let's take our if statement. If we press the space key and we are on the ground, then we can jump. We turn off the boolean called is on ground, and then we're also going to say player anim dot set our trigger, and we need to say what the name of the trigger is. So open these parentheses, and since it's a concise name, a string name, then we're going to call it exactly as we see it over here. We need to spell it the same way. Jump underscore trig with a lowercase t, almost did uppercase t, and close that bracket. So let's see, I'm going to save that and go into here. So when you hit the space bar, we should see a jump animation. Now we're probably going to be moving forward because we know that jump trig, and we'll see if this is true. We're going to look and see if this check marks when we press space. He's probably going to move forward because it sees us in a running animation. Yeah, but do you see, let's see if jump trig is triggering. Well, it isn't showing it here, but that's okay. It is working. We know that it's working because we see it. Let's just, for the sake of looking, if I press space, let me turn this back off. Let me try it one more time. Let's watch it here. So the problem is he's doing this run and not this static, standing jump. There you go. So you can see that animation playing. So here's our cheat for this. Instead of us trying to work through how to get this standing jump to work, this is a nice little feature that's helpful when you're doing 2D style games in a 3D environment. We're going to click on player and go on to their rigid body. And you have this little button here called constraints. And constraints just says don't let your player move in these. Now we've used constraints in a script. We set boundaries with them, but this just says that they can't move on any of these positions or rotations. So currently what we see in our animations are players moving forward on the X. So let's just make it so that his X position can't change. Honestly, I don't think we have to check anything else, but he is tilting forward. So let's make sure that tilting forward doesn't happen. We can't rotate along the X. And actually, we don't want to tilt on any axis. So let's just freeze the rotation on X, Y, and Z. And we can also freeze the position on the Z because Z is going back towards this screen and we don't need that either. So the only thing we actually need to do is go up. So let's press play and see if that solves our issue. So if I jump, sure enough, it is running the animation. And he's not being propelled forward, which is fine. Okay. So even though it's not like totally in the script, it does work and doesn't cause us any issues. Some things we want to play with though here is if we press play one more time, you'll see that his animation doesn't match his jumps. Like he jumps and now he's running again mid-air. And it would be nice if he were to hit the ground before his jump animation starts. So as you already know, we can slow down the speed of the running jump animation. So that speed looks like, it's a speed of 1. So what if we made it run longer so that the animation is taking longer to go through? So I want to try like 1.5. So that's one part of the solution. But another thing is I want to make his jump feel a little bit better. So I want to show you how to clean up that jump some. It's a little like too floaty. It still doesn't feel very good. So let's play with the other parts of this. Let's go to our player's rigid body here, and let's increase their mass. Right now it's a mass of 1, which is fine. I'm going to really let's go to 60. Almost think of it as like 60 pounds or something. And what you'll see right away is that their jump is going to be reduced because remember we're using a rigid body. So boom, they can barely jump. It's not even, I can't even get them off the ground very well. Because I'm playing with that jump, let's go ahead and increase on the player script how much jump force we have. And I was playing with it, and I came up with 700. It sounds like a lot. And also last thing we was going to play with that gravity as well. So see what this looks like now. Okay, that's still like very floaty. So one other thing would be, I'm going to increase the gravity to 1.5. Try that. Feels a little bit better. And then I'm going to really like, let's extend his running animation. You know what? I think I was playing with it. What if I do lower speed? You know, there's something I'm not doing right with that. It's like 0.7. What if I do it? That should be. Oh, you know what? I like a fool. I increased that number, which makes the speed higher. But if I drag it out, make it smaller, then his jump feels a little better. That feels a little bit better. You can play with these numbers and get a sense of what feels better for you. I would still want him to be on the ground a little bit more. So I might play with these numbers some. I might go down to like 500. And I'll try not to bore you with this. Let me see if I can just find something really quick. Okay, that feels a little bit better. I like that. That feels a little bit more challenging too. I can't jump too far out. And it's like his feet are hitting the ground right on time. Yeah, 500 feels good. Now, we have a problem here. We can see that he's running into this sign, and he's still triggering this animation, and the run animation, which we should make this stop. So we already have a Boolean that says, hey, you've hit a game object with a tag called obstacle, and so it's turning the game off. So we should probably go ahead and just run a death animation. So let's go look at our death animations in this script. Death. And let me move this over. We have a couple options. Entry goes straight to an alive, and then from here we have a death 01. I'm going to double click it and get a little preview of what that looks like. He's falling backwards. That's okay. I think backwards was better because he's hitting an object in front of him. Let's see what this one looks like. This is just the very tail end of that. So let's look at death 02. Yeah, that falling forward, I don't know if I like that one for our game. I'm just curious what this falling looks like. Oh, this is just a free fall. Sort of like Mario, like you're falling from the clouds kind of thing. So I like death 01. So what is our transition here? We need to have, let me drag this down. So we need to meet two conditions, it looks like. We need to meet the death Boolean needs to be true. I'm going to look at these parameters. So death Boolean needs to be true, and an integer called death type integer needs to be exactly 1. So not greater than, less than. So we just need to set it to 1. Easy. We can do that. The way that it's easy is we're just going to add it here in our collision. If we hit an obstacle, we were going to look at that animation and see if, or set those numbers. So we don't need to create another variable. We already have the animator, and we're already getting it in the start. So let's just add these lines of code. Very similar to what we did here, where we said player anim set trigger, we need to player anim set bool. Dot set that Boolean, set bool, and open up, and then we need to say what the name of the bool is. So we have to spell it exactly the same. So it's a string, so it's going to be a death underscore b, and then after that put a little comma, and then we have to now set it to a state. So we have to say what we want it to be, and we want it to be true, and add a semicolon. All right, let's press return. And we also need to set this death type underscore int. Now, I think earlier I said you had only set one of these, and I was wrong. I was thinking about there's like if conditions, either or conditions, but these are, you have to have both of these. And so I apologize if I stated that wrong. We need to make sure both of these conditions are met for that transition to happen. So anyways, you can probably write this out without my help. If you can, pause the video here and try it on your own. And I'll probably try to get something other than the Monty Python intermission music. Okay, I lied to you. I love that song. So if you tried it, awesome. Player anim dot, and this is an int, so we need to set int integer. Yeah, set integer. Yep, you have to say the whole word. I forgot that. I don't know why that surprised me because I've done it 100 times. And then I'm going to open those quotation marks, and I need to say what integer specifically, and it's called def type capital T underscore int. All right, go outside of the quotations, and then we need to set it to a number, and that number has got to be a 1. Now let's semicolon. Let's save that script really quick. Okay, that looks good. So we have to collide with an obstacle, and that will make it so that we run this death animation. Let's see. There's still going to be a problem here, and I can already predict what it's going to be. Let's see what it looks like. Boom. Runs that animation. Hey, that looks pretty good. What I'd like to do is to also I wonder if I can jump right now. Oh yeah, that's our other problem, is I can still jump when I'm unconscious. So I think we need to also just set a condition on our jumping on our player, which is basically if, okay, this is really important. I want you to know this. We're saying if we press the space key and we're on the ground, and then we also want to say if the game is not over, because that's how we're determining how we're stopping these other things, right? If game over, you set game over true if we hit the ground. If we, yeah, whatever. So how about we say if he is on the ground, and so we need to do 2 ampersands because we're saying we're checking for something, not setting a value. And game over. Now if we want to say it's not true, oh, spell it right. If we want to say it's not true, this is a really simple thing, but it's really important to know, is we just say exclamation point. If game is not over, that's what this means, not over. So let's save and see if that fixes our issue. So he's running on the ground, and let's see, look at my player, game is over. So if I hit the space bar, I get nothing because game is over, and it's a condition that is not being fulfilled. All right, that is enough for this video. A lot of stuff about animations. I hope this is not overbearing, but I'm going to try to put as much as I can in the video to help you out with this. The next video should be our last one for this project, so I'm looking forward to finishing this game.